when it comes to the vetting process for new franchises, and I know that this is, I mean, one end of the U.S. to the other, and I love to see the growth of the sport. When the league is vetting those new franchises to come in, what are you looking for from an ownership group and the stability and how what's the idea about bringing new folks in under the tent, and what is that vetting process like?
Absolutely. So, one of the exciting things about the NPSL is that continues to strengthen. So our ownership, kind of team owner profile that we're looking to identify, it continues to evolve. And so, I think some of the things that we've seen where owners are very successful, obviously, is past performance and experience, not just as a soccer operator, but as an entrepreneur. I think the other items that we're looking for is, hey, do you have control of venues, right? Do you own your own venue? Do you have a long-term ground lease? Can you monetize that, right? And the reality is that when you're able to have influence, over the venue, you've got good past performance, you've got a good team around you. Naturally, I think good things, happen in the community. So those are some of the things that give you an idea. But naturally, the owner profile continues to evolve, and we're really excited because we keep getting a lot of our interest. To be fair, we get a lot of interest, and we're trying to be somewhat selective on the teams that we come in, to fit this profile to continue to grow with the league.
I'll ask it. How selective are you? It's almost like a game show. How selective
Yeah.
are you in this process? I mean, because I mean,
Yeah.
the last thing that the NPSL wants, the last thing any league wants, is a one and done, because
Correct.
it doesn't promote the league, and it doesn't benefit the league in the overall. And what you've been able to do there at VB City is one of those examples of you build, you're in, and then you want to continue to grow and evolve. But how do you sit there and prevent those one and dones to where you're having to sit there and try and reclaim a market all over again?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the challenges in you know, any sports team across any type of sport, right? And especially at the amateur level, right? But the way that we look at it is you've got a lot of interest where team owners come in and maybe they're not able to show, hey, a certain amount of liquid assets or a certain amount of past performance. And so what we want to try to do is encourage them and provide a platform. And you'll see the NPSL, regional league platform, that'll be a great fit for some of these teams, and then evolve into the NPSL. And the reason for that, to your point, it's great to have these teams come in, for the long term. I think the first year is exciting, the second year is exciting, the third year can be exciting. And what happens after years 2, 3, and 4? And that's typically where you start to see retention, where hey, if the owner's losing a lot of money, or it gets challenging or stale, like what does that look like over the next 5 years? And so I think one of our objectives as we look at this is to build a platform, one that everybody's excited to be in, but then two is set up where obviously we recognize we can't run the teams for the teams, but at the same time those team owners look at it and say, hey, we do have a little bit of a playbook, and we've got a bigger picture, because I do think everybody gets excited in year one, and then naturally it's like, hey, how does that evolve into years 3 through 5? And that's really what we're looking at, so then that way there's stability in the league moving forward.
Stephen Wagner, new chairman of the NPSL, dropping by and hanging out with us here on the morning show. And when it comes to the league roadmap, are there any sections of the country where you would sit there and go, okay, I'd really like for us to grow here. I'd really like for us to solidify here. I'm comfortable where we are here with saturation, because you don't also want to get oversaturated when it comes to demand, even though supply is readily available for the NPSL. What I guess this is my Goldilocks question. So, uh, what's too hard? What's too soft? What's just right now?
Absolutely. So one of the things I look at, and I think we look at it as a team, right? And we've got some great individuals between full-time staff working on it, and then obviously, regional board members and guys that have had a lot of success, in their markets, working this. But one of the things we look at is, hey, can we get to a certain number? And that for us is 6 to 8 teams in a conference. If you have more, fantastic, but we really don't want to be less than that. So we're not looking to say, hey, we need to be the largest league in the country. At the same time, we want to make sure that we've got quality in those conferences. And a lot of these areas that I'll talk about, these are just areas that I could say, hey, there's either a lot of competition in the areas, or there's just not a lot of offerings. Example, like the Northwest. That's a great example in the Seattle Portland area. That's always a what I call an up and coming area, and I think can continue to evolve for soccer. The Gulf Coast area, Florida. Those are some areas that naturally, regardless, take the NPSL out of it. It's harder to, have some consistency from time to time based on oversaturation of leagues and opportunities, or just not a lot of opportunity. So those are some of the areas, to include Texas. Those will be some of the areas that we look at and we say, hey, are there some creative ways to look at this where it's beneficial to the teams and the communities locally, but also an opportunity for the league to place a pretty strong foothold in those areas.
At the same time, I know that late in the season for the NPSL, and especially when you drift into the playoffs and go deep into the playoffs, you lose players because they got to go back to school. How much of a challenge is it to navigate? Okay, well, what if we slide the schedule so we can keep our rosters? No, we've got to keep the schedule where it is because of venues and footprint and all this kind of stuff. How difficult is it to navigate rosters and keeping them stacked and knowing that you're going to have players going back to where they were before the season started, even though they created a successful environment in that particular season for the club that they were at?
Absolutely. So that's it's kind of a two-pronged approach there. One is obviously from the league standpoint, there's only so many weeks in the season if you're just looking at the college player. I think one of the things that we need to reevaluate, and we've done over the last couple of years, and we'll see this going into this next year, especially with the college landscape evolving. How much are we dependent on just the college player? Can we have a combination of that? A lot of our West Coast teams, they start early, February, March timeframe. And so, these are things that we'll definitely reflect on. I think the other aspect of it is what can we do in our home markets for, our home environments, I should say, for our existing teams, to continue to encourage players to want to be there. One, if you're obviously in a playoff run, that's always exciting. But, there's some other things that I look at. Hey, is it relationships with professional teams? Is it maybe there's, different ways from a competition standpoint to play other leagues, right? Hey, it would be great to see the NPSL playing some other, high profile teams and other leagues at the amateur or professional level. And we can start to place those strategically. So that way, it's beneficial to all the leagues, but also it encourages players to say, hey, I really want to be a part of that and I want to be around. And so those are just a couple ideas that I have. And we're working on a couple things behind the scenes, and hopefully some of these can come out. But naturally, part of it is just, the home environment with the team and trying to, continue to create interest there.
Now that you are the grand exalted poobah in charge of the league, I know that you, and then I ask this question of owners and managers and coaches and all of this. I know that you've got a to-do list because a lot of
Sure.
folks will sit there and say, well, hey, well, the 2026 season, yeah, it's a couple months away, but it's really not. And there's that sense of calendar, and yeah, you look at the calendar, but no, we got to get to the calendar. We can't just sit there and go, oh, we have a schedule. Where is the to-do list for you to get ready for the season? And it might be something that's a malleable document already. Where is it? Is it in a Google Doc? Is it on a legal pad? Is it buried underneath the sofa cushion someplace? Is it on one of those big 6 foot by 8 foot dry erase boards that I don't currently see? That's
Yeah.
got a bunch of different colors and lines and arrows and everything. Where is this to-do list of yours to get ready for the new season of the NP? And what do you think the next thing you can cross off of that to-do list is?
Well, I'll tell you what, we got a massive war room, and we're excited about it. No, I'm just kidding. Here's one of the exciting things, right? We've got a very good staff at the NPSL. I think that's one of our differentiators. And so, not only are they full time and year round, but in addition to that, we've already been planning a lot of different things for members. In the next coming months, we're going to have an all members meeting to kind of kick off, this, look at it as a 120-day plan moving forward. We're also going to have our virtual owners meeting. And then, naturally you'll have your logistical items, hey, playoffs and schedules and all those types of things. But also I want there to be, items for, team owners to look forward to. And not just team owners, players, as an example. Hey, why come to the NPSL? Somewhat rhetorical, but why would I want to play here over the summer months, especially when the games evolve and there's so many different options, right? And so these are things that we're looking at, continuously throughout the year. To answer your question directly, I'm one guy. I like to put things on paper. Hey, let's get this stuff going. Let's share it. Let's be transparent. Let's communicate. And so that's one of the things that I think will be really exciting moving forward. Is kind of the leadership style that I have. I think will be as of right now, I've gotten a lot of good encouragement from team owners and in the community, and I'm excited to work with everybody together to make this something that everybody's excited about.
So when you have questions yourself, who's on your speed dial to sit there and bounce ideas off of? Who are your bartenders when you got a question or when you just want to sit at a table and sit there and think about things?
I tell you what, I can't give you all my secret sauce, but I've got I do have one of the benefits. I've got experience doing this in multiple industries. Take the soccer world out of it for a second, but in the IT world, in the real estate world, obviously in the sports world, we've been around for quite a while. We've got different sports programs in different states, and so one of the things that I think makes me a little bit unique is I'm able to bring a different type of experience to the table. And I think as far as to answer your question as direct as possible, I've got relationships with industry leaders across different markets, and I think that's one of the things that I can tap on a little bit from here and there. And then obviously it's a win-win, meaning they'll come to me for certain things and vice versa. But I think that's the way. If you build a team, I've always looked at it's not about any one individual. If you can build a team where everybody's excited moving forward into one direction, especially around the NPSL specifically, right? I think there's going to be a lot of good things to come. But hopefully that's we'll see what happens there. But hopefully some of these decisions come out and everybody's excited about them.
And so, yeah, I said, it's all right. So if I have this individual, no, I can't tell him this guy. I can't say this guy publicly. Uh, when it comes to the upcoming season and your tenure, what are you the most excited about when it comes to the NPSL in 26? And what are you I'll use the word, but then I'll twist it a little bit. What are you the most concerned about? What is the biggest challenge, do you think, for you and the league going into 26?
Absolutely. I'll talk a little bit, from a leadership standpoint in the NPSL. I'll also make it relatable, right? Because I think, I've also been wearing the, as an owner at the club for almost 13, 14 years. I think naturally any challenge there is, how do you continue to stay competitive, right? And how do you continue to be an exciting product in the community? And I think that's relationship building. I'll give you an example. Like at the team level, this past week we've had some great meetings with local college coaches and regional coaches. We're doing a lot of recruiting at this point, this time of the year, right? And then naturally at the NPSL level, we're trying to put some things together. Obviously, it's logistical for the league coming forward, but also in addition, how do we put this together where, there's some other things where team owners like, hey, like I want to be a part of that. And I think that's what you're going to see moving forward. And then I guess locally as well, how do you engage local partners and sponsorships? I'll talk about Virginia Beach for a second. This will be public in the next week or so. We've just engaged on a 4-year title sponsor for our men's senior team. That's exciting, and so they're a local partner. They're a very successful restaurant in the area of Norfolk, and I think that's going to be exciting, in the community. So just if you're wearing both hats here, how do you stay relevant? How do you make it exciting? How do you have a very good product, on the field for fans, for the soccer player, and then how do we have a platform that gives people, some flexibility, but also enough structure where, hey, look, this is a professional run league. And I think that's kind of the combination that I've looked at. And I think that'll be a recipe for success.
Okay, as I sit here and look for restaurants in the Norfolk area, figure out who it is.
I'll tell you what, we'll have you in. You can come out. We'll take you out to dinner.
Hey, it's up. Look, I mean, if it's Guy Fieri Steakhouse, I'm not going to turn that down. How hard is it to, VB City's been at it for 12 years, right?
Yeah, so I would say 2013. We played 2014. Then obviously you got one COVID year, so I would give it at least in that range, depending on how many seasons we'd count. Just with you have one that we didn't have, but yeah, in that range. Yep.
So first 4 years, it's semi-pro. Then you join NPSL in 19, and then you're kind of on that regional national stage at that point. How difficult is it to maintain and grow in the current environment, considering what you've been able to do there at VB City? Obviously you don't want to stay stagnant. You want to grow and continue to evolve. How difficult is that in today's landscape to grow and evolve locally and still be safe when it comes to what you want to do with your growth curve?
Absolutely. Well, how it all got started, I had actually bought an NPSL membership, at the time, and I'd partnered with DC United, so if you might already know this, may not, so I'll give you a quick 30-second story.
Mhm.
And so this is the way it started. I was working in partnership with DC United. Our head coach was Jaime Moreno.
Mhm.
We had Ben Olsen involved, a lot of big names there. And the league was looking at expansion. I said, hey, I've got relationships down in that Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, Norfolk area. Is there a way to do something down there? This was back in 2013, and so we launched, in 2014 and kind of kicked it off, right? And so I think it really comes back to your point. It's all relationship based because people want to do business that they like to work with. That's a natural thing. Players want to play in a club that they're comfortable with and they feel like they can progress forward. So I think those are natural things that we look at. But to your point, the game's evolved, right? It's like the articles that talk about the alphabet soup of leagues, right? Like there's a new league at to be fair, at the pro, at the amateur, at the youth level every other week. There's a merger. There's this. There's that. And so I think part of that's trying to stay up with the curve. I think part of that is saying, hey, like focus on what we can control in our market. And if you do good things, naturally people are going to want to come out. And I think, I could give an example after example of NPSL teams that have had success in the NPSL, and they're getting a couple thousand fans, 5,000 fans, 20,000 fans at a championship match. Like there's so many ways to go about it. So I think it's how do you get creative, focus on what you can control in the market, and then try to leverage that to make a very good fan experience.
When George Mason plays William and Mary, do you have one of those half and half T-shirts?
I guess the good news is they have similar colors. So I guess maybe the opportunity here is I just need to wear green and gold. Maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
the way to do it. I haven't been in that situation yet. I haven't been to a game where they're both playing, but that would probably be what I do today.
No truth to the rumor that you're changing the NPSL logo colors to green and gold?
A little bit of truth there. No, I'm just kidding. It is funny though. I tell you what, I don't know how it all happened, but whether it was high school, college, you name it, for some reason there was always green in the colors. And so, we just, I've somehow made that work. So in my closet, I don't have a lot of green, but I have a little bit left over from all the college stuff. So that's all good things.
If the NPSL could make a Christmas list for Santa, what would it be?
I like that. That's a tough one. Yeah, I tell you what, I tell you what, the thing that I cherish about the NPSL is the relationships that we have. And, I mean this honestly. I've known some great people, that we've been involved with, and, I've built some great relationships across the country, with team owners. And so, I think my wish list there is more, hey, can we continue to attract more good people to the organization? And I think, naturally you can find, this is my 2 cents. You can find money, you can find a way to get into these certain things and that. But, when you've got something where you've got good people around and everybody's excited to work together, I think that's where you got something special. So hopefully we can get more of that coming into the new year in 2026.
And we're looking forward to hearing from you and everybody else that's attached to the new horizon here in 2026 with the NPSL. The man was elected. He's elected. He is elected now. Elected. He's been a member of the board of directors, regional board member, corporate treasurer. Now he's chairman of the board. Stephen Wagoner, selected chairman of the league for the NPSL. Cannot thank you enough for dropping by, especially as you're trying to conquer the planet and make sure that that everything is in the order that it is supposed to be. Do not be a stranger. If under any circumstance there's any time that you want to sit there and go, yeah, yo, Nelson, I got something I got to get off my chest, you know where you can do it. Can't thank you enough as you're racing around there trying to figure out things, getting ready for the Christmas holiday in 26. Don't be a stranger, my friend. Great to have you here on the show, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks again for having me. I definitely enjoyed it, and I look forward to, building relationships